Welcome to the Big Fellas Podcast, where we chop it up about all things past, present, and future about the game of basketball. Where facts, stats, and context reign supreme.
That is blasphemous!
Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. Get ready to learn from players, coaches, and fans from all levels of the game and see the court in a brand new way. And now, fresh off the sidelines, here's your host, John Hartofilis.
What it do, fellas, and welcome to the Big Fellas Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, JH, coming to you from New York City, the mecca of basketball. Today, I'm joined by Larry Wlliams, A.K.A. Bone Collector. Bone is one of the greatest streetball legends of all time, winning 5 straight Rucker Park MVPs in the 2000s, bringing streetball culture worldwide with BallUp in the 2010s, and now getting ready to launch a successful academic career in the sciences after he finally hangs them up. We've got a good one in store for you today, fellas. Episode number 15, Larry Wlliams, Bone Collector. Hey, Bone, what's going on?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. I'm super excited about this. Actually, just yesterday, I had a tournament with my freshman team, and I told them, oh, guys, big day tomorrow. Bone Collector's coming on. They're like, no way. This is like the first time their faces all lit up because they've obviously all been watching your videos, and you've left an impression on them. So I'm looking forward to this.
Man, I'm so happy to be doing this too, man. It's one thing to explain your journey, but when people are supporting you as you are in your journey, it's a whole nother energy.
Oh, definitely a lot of fun. So just real quick, can you kind of walk us through that journey, kind of how you got to where you are?
So my career started in New York, Rucker Park. I won MVP in 2000, from the early 2000s to about 2005, I got MVP. Because it was such a high level of pro athletes there with Iverson and Kobe, rest in peace, and all the guys that were coming through there, it gave me a high caliber of recognition throughout the world of basketball. And with that, I was able to go on and play with the Globetrotters. I played in a couple D-League, on a couple D-League teams, and then I eventually played in the ABA and CBA. And from there, that Rucker Park journey kind of solidified where I am today and how I'm able to keep pushing forward with the name being what it is.
No, that's awesome. And I actually had no idea you played for the Globetrotters. I couldn't really find that anywhere. Well, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's something I haven't really heard of.
Yeah, back in maybe 2004, I believe, or 5, maybe the end of, or maybe even 06, 05, 06. I played a season with the Globetrotters. It was an amazing experience. It was 380-something games, so you're playing a game every day. I learned a lot of things about the game that I didn't know, like, how to spin the ball on my, fingers and roll the ball around my shoulders and all these things. So that experience itself was just something new that I didn't think I was, going to be privileged enough to be a part of. And big shout out to Manny Jackson and all those guys for the Globetrotters. That was one of the best experiences of my life.
No, definitely so much fun. As a kid, we'd always go to my uncle would always take us to the garden and we'd always watch them. So that was always a fun time. Off that beginning, when did you kind of fall in love with the game as a kid and how'd you kind of develop that ball handling ability?
When I was a kid, my father took me out to the court and just showed me all the little intricate things I could learn about dribbling a basketball. And from there, the fire grew for me to want to perfect the things that he was teaching me. So even to this day, I try to, when I go out and train, I try to think of 2 new moves that I've never done before and practice them. So I'm always challenging myself. So I don't have, when people say, most people that have nice handles, the moniker is they're going to get in their bag. I feel like everything I do is the bag. So there's no limit to it. There shouldn't be, I'm going into these particular set of moves. My father, being that he taught me how to think things through, he gave me 3 ways to attack these things. And I think it'll help kids. One way is you should always understand that if you're fast, that's the first weapon. And the second thing is, if you're smart, that is your ultimate weapon. And number 3 is energy is not taught. If you don't want to run, you're not going to run. If you're not going to want to hustle, you're not going to hustle. So with those 3 things that he instilled in me, I chose to use those things to make my skill level high enough to teach it to the next generation. And I had the privilege of working with some of the up and coming stars in the NBA because I do train pro players now, and I'm able to share that information with them.
That's awesome. I like that. Fast, smart, energy, and that's kind of what you need. You need all 3, and it's simple, but that's something that works. So you kind of just touched on it right now. I was going to get into it later. Those NBA players that you're training, one of them is obviously John Moran, and he had a breakout rookie season. What was it like, obviously, watching him develop throughout this year and kind of seeing him in the bubble?
For Ja Morant to be doing what he's doing as a rookie is amazing because he's in a league where the guard position is getting more and more dangerous. So he's not in a conference where he has the ability to rest. He has to perform every night. I think that a young player who's mentally prepared that way with the skills to go along with that has a unbelievable future. He is probably in the next 5 years, he would be, in the conversation of the best PGs in the NBA, I believe. If not now already.
Yeah. No, definitely. He's so explosive. And when you talk about just guys with a bright future, he's right up there and definitely a well-deserved rookie of the year. I don't think that should have been a question, and really good for him. So back at your beginning, when was kind of that time when you realized that you kind of were different in terms of that you had that crazy handle and that you were doing something that, most other kids couldn't do?
When I actually knew, and it's hard to know that you're good until you play certain people. So to be honest, I actually knew I had a special type of handle when I went to New York and I played against so many different NBA players, and my handle would transfer to the pros. And I didn't, sometimes you watch TV and you say, man, I'm better than that guy. You sit at home watching the TV and you're like, but you don't realize that guy is good at everything. You may look at that guy and think he's not, and then so you try to put yourself in those perspectives when you're on the court, and to realize that my moves, the things I was practicing, work on pros more so than everyone else, which is a big shout out and testament to my father. He prepared me to weaponize my moves for pro athletes only. So it was just a blessing to know that they could go both ways. So I can go into a street ball game and put on a show, or I can go play against Allen Iverson and try to put on a show. It would transfer over both ways. And that happened for me in like the early 2000s. I felt like I had it, but after I played a bunch of those guys, about 2004 or 5, I knew I had a special gift with the ball.
Oh, definitely. And obviously in street ball, kind of earning your stripes and proving yourself in the court is the only way to move up. Who were those guys for you then, like that you were looking up to at that point in the early 2000s?
In the early 2000s, I didn't look up to anyone at the time. I had my particular players that were my favorite, but looking up to them was different for me. I put them as my targets, and sometimes that's not a good thing if you take the energy out of it, the negative context being a target. But more so, Allen Iverson and Michael Jordan were my all-time favorite players, and I watched Allen Iverson in an interview say that when he got in the league, he wanted to attack Michael Jordan, and that energy alone was good for my mind. It let me understand that your heroes have to become your targets in order for you to be the best you can be. So even though Iverson was my favorite player, he became my target at the time. So I wanted to be a better version of Iverson, and being able to, it's funny, I used to say, one day I'll be able to make someone fall every time I touch the ball. And in 2020, I actually can do it.
Oh, that's great. And yeah, more so kind of the guys that came before you kind of started street ball. What were kind of those guys that you looked up to maybe as a kid that you kind of wanted to be like?
Well, for me, street ball, all of the guys I wanted to be like were in California. My father was one of my all-time favorite players. Spin Master Eric Holmes in Pasadena was one of my favorite players. Robin Kennedy, Sick With It is what they call him. Mixtape was one of my favorite players. Joey Brown's unheard of guard that you guys have never heard of. Matt Lewis, another guard who was insane as I was a kid growing up. Reggie Cotton. These are guys that I'm saying the names that you guys wouldn't know, but those were my influences. And I didn't see I was in a gang-filled environment, so I didn't see a lot of athletes. I only seen my small bubble of people. So I wasn't able to venture out, and I didn't even know about new street ball until 2000. So until I seen the mixtape when I was incarcerated, I saw the mixtape with Skip to My Lou and Ali Mo, rest in peace, on it. And that's when I realized there were more street ballers out there. So mine were local heroes mostly to start.
Oh, definitely. That's obviously, as a kid, you're just watching those guys play and you want to get to that level. And you get to that level, and now you have all these guys that you looked up to a few years ago, and now they're your targets. That's awesome. So kind of once you got to that point, when did Bone Collector become a thing, and that kind of became your persona?
It happened, and the early 2000s again. One of my friends, my backcourt teammate, his name was David Seals. He noticed that the paramedics would come into every game, my first 5 games, because people was getting hurt. And he called me in at like 3 a.m, and I thought he wanted to work out, but he called me to tell me, yo, I got a dope name for you, The Bone Collector. And I was like, man, that's a movie with Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie. I don't want to do that. And he was like, no, I'm telling you, you're making people fall and get hurt. You're collecting their bones. So when we went to the park, he told the announcer to call me that. And I'll never forget, I played a game against Jamal Tinsley, who at the time was playing for the Indiana Pacers. Jay-Z brought a bunch of guys out. And I remember stealing the ball and dribbling down court. And I just remember the announcer saying my name over and over and over again. And it kind of went from there. And he was like saying it was some sort of melody. So the whole crowd was saying it. And their energy made me just take my game to a whole nother level. And from that moment, I believe my name spread like wildfire through New York, because before social media, it was mostly word of mouth, and I would go everywhere and I would hear my name all over the place. And it was a good feeling. And it's even more amazing to still be able to do it to this day.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. That's such an awesome story. Were there, like, in terms of like the number of guys that you were making them break their bones, were the paramedics like out there waiting, like, oh my God, again?
Yeah, the first
Is
3
that kind of what's
games,
happening?
first 3 games, yeah, it's exactly what was happening. So the first 3 games, it was more so, okay, because, you know, it was not too far away. It's probably, you know, 20 blocks, 15 blocks away. So the guys used to the reason why they stayed is because they said, we're not taking that short drive. I thought it was hilarious. We're just going to stay here. You might have hurt somebody, so we're going to stay. So I thought it was cool way to kind of get introduced to the game. And that name, you know, those two things going together and being in New York full of hecklers and all the energy that was out there, it made for a perfect fit.
Oh, for sure. So kind of when you're playing against all these high level guys, I mean, it's kind of like when people say elite shot blockers get dunked on all the time. Have you had your ankles broken at any point, or does that kind of not happen?
When I was young, my dad used to do all the moves that I do to everyone else. He used to do them all to me. So I had to, in order to learn how to get your break ankles, you had to get your ankles broke first. So my dad used to do it, because once he made me fall the first couple times, I never fell again. So it was young. I was about 7 or 8 when it stopped.
That's great. So that must have been a really good learning experience for you. Your dad must have been an absolutely huge mentor for you, not just in basketball, but just in everything, I would imagine.
Yeah, he was. He was one of those fathers that allowed you to grow as a man and learn the world, but still make your own choices and decisions. So it was much easier to navigate and, you know, be wise. He also made me understand that by the time the average man is 40, there's a lot of things that he just won't realize and understand because of his maturity level. So I wanted to be a lot more ahead of the curve. So I started early, studying and doing the things that, you know, made me a good athlete. But as well, you know, people don't know this, but after I'm done playing basketball, I will go to school for science. So my father kept me rooted in the things that I love, science and art. Character illustration and science are going to be my the things that I'll do once I'm done playing.
No, that's fantastic. I didn't know about that. So were you kind of thinking of taking that?
Well, where I want to take the science is, and I think that because in our, you know, genetics makeup, we forget that that's where we can replenish those things that are very harmful. Like, I do understand that with fires burning and our rainforest burning, we lose 70% or 60% of our oxygen and pollution and all these things that are affecting people every day. There's ways and different things that, you know, those particular situations can be affected by science. And I plan on figuring what those things are and trying my best to come up with some sort of solution, because my kids can't grow up in the same thing I saw as a kid. I don't think that's necessary. So I'll you know, keep my mind in that area until I kind of venture off into, you know, more, you know, I really like space a lot. So who knows? I don't really know where I'll go from that point, but somewhere along those lines.
That's so interesting. It's awesome to know that, like, obviously basketball's been a huge part of your life, but you're already thinking ahead and you're thinking years down the line and what you're going to do after you're done playing. First said you'd think about science. I was laughing thinking about you'd be some kind of biologist or something, just studying the human body and bones and, and that kind of thing. That's pretty funny.
I know, right? That would be actually a great field to go in. I could just keep his name too, the Bone Collector.
You could know the brand's all there. Everyone knows you, but that's awesome.
Right. I like that.
obviously you've played one-on-one against like some really awesome people. You played against guys that are 7 feet tall, 7'5", 7'6", NBA legends. You've challenged guys that are legends of the game, top 5 players of all time. Kind of what is that in terms of like having that competitive spirit to kind of challenge those guys and then also to follow through and beat them? What's that kind of like for you?
Man, it's a drive that you can't explain. It's kind of the best way to explain it is for those who don't know about the NBA bubble, and if you're watching the NBA, that if you lose 3 games, you have to pack your clothes and leave them packed until you win or lose. And there's an energy you have to have all day in order to be prepared for a game. The coach can't give it to you, your players can't give it to you, your teammates can't give it to you. It's a drive that only comes from within. And it's the things that make you get up at 2 in the morning and go work on a move you couldn't figure it out. Or get up at 7 in the morning and go run on the beach to be faster on the court, or to do the same move until you master it and you perfect it. And that drive and that energy is something that I can't explain, I can't duplicate, and it only happens when I am tested in these situations. And basketball is one of the, amongst other sports, is one of the highest, I guess, intellectual properties for sports, because you're using everything from, it's a mental, it's a feeling, it's almost a spiritual game. You shoot the ball hits the rim, you bounce around as the ball hits the rim until it goes in. So you're connected to the ball a lot different than, other sports. And because of that, I think that drive in itself is something that you have to manifest on according to how you feel about the sport. And I personally feel that anybody that gets in front of me, I'm going to torture them with the basketball. So that energy won't go away. It only gets stronger. So I constantly work to keep that energy strong.
That's awesome. And it's beautiful to kind of think about, that's such a beautiful way to kind of just describe the game of basketball as it's kind of poetic, you're one with the ball. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Off that point though, when you're talking about torturing guys, what's the difference between someone that's 7'6" and someone like Flight, who's not that tall? Like, what's the difference in terms of like getting someone to break? Someone that's uncoordinated and short, someone that's taller?
There's there's always different ways. So when you play a guy taller, in my opinion, I've only been, in situations when you play against a guy 7'6", the court is smaller, because if they put their arms up, you can't see the rim behind you. So when those situations, I choose to use the cat and mouse offenses, where I kind of leave the ball in an area where he has to feel vulnerable to get it. And once he makes any mistakes, I play off his mistakes, cat and mouse. Now, when you play a guy that is not as tall or not as skilled or whatever the case may be, or a smaller defender, I choose to watch their eyes first. If I feel and know that they're afraid of me, then the game will be over, in a matter of 2-3 minutes. If I know that they're confident, my first objective is to take away their confidence. And the first thing I do is, I won't tell you the secret, but I do this one particular move that automatically opens up your defense. And once your defense is open, you're vulnerable. It's like jumping into the middle of the ocean and with nothing around you. So you're literally looking and searching for what I feel uncomfortable in this area. And then I use my weapons to attack you there. That's why I call it torture. So you're in a position to, you can't retreat, you can't run, you have to stay there and deal with your punishment. So because of that process, it happens over and over again. You start to balance out between who to use it on, who not to use it on. Some people are, when you play them, they already feel defeated, so you don't need to do as many moves. But I like to entertain, so sometimes I over dribble. So I'll do, I'll throw it to somebody like 50 times if I have to. As Professor would say, we got to get that clip. It's something that I wouldn't want a kid to say, well, I'm going to master you can't just, figure out how to play a 7'6" player. You can't figure out how to, master to play a smaller guy. Those moments is when you figure it out. So and definitively, I would say you have to be able to balance your skill level according to what they are approaching you with. And realize if you're playing a 7'6" guy, you don't want to waste all your energy on offense, because you got to play defense, which is the most important part of the game. So that's how I approach it.
I'm kind of just scared, and I'm 3,000 miles away from you on a Zoom call. Just that idea of just being completely tortured.
It's not a game.
No way out. No way out.
No way out.
So when guys kind of like get discouraged and they put their head down, like, oh, I'm guarding Bone. and they're not really playing, like you could easily score, right? Because they're not really playing hard, but you want to embarrass them. You want to put them through that torture instead of just getting by them, getting a layup. How do you kind of make them play you? What you're saying about making them play you?
There's a million different ways. Most of the time, you make them guard you by doing little things like scoring on them a lot. You know, it sounds like a little thing, but if you're playing in a pickup game, going to 15, and you have 8 points, that person that's guarding you is not gonna just let you get that next 9, 10, 11, and you play. You know, you kind of play the role of, I'm not really, going to give you too much. And then as soon as they get their energy high, you give them the weapons you have waiting for them. So that's, it's always a thing about basketball and anything in life is, if your mind is weak, so will the body be, the body will follow. So if you're always, in a position to try to outthink your opponent and, outwit your opponent, they're more than likely they're going to, have a difficult situation. And that fear, once I see that fear, it's much easier to navigate because, you don't really have to do much when someone's afraid. And if you do want to put on that show, that's more of a street ball thing. I learned that throughout the years of how to keep the crowd hyped. There's different moves, there's different scenarios. You can throw it off someone's legs. You can bounce the ball off their head a little bit. You can spin it around their back and throw it in the air and point at them. And, you can do, in the And One mixtape, they did a little dance in front of you or something to antagonize you, basically like, get up here, get up here. But, my whole process is a lot different because there's no better teacher than buckets. So if you getting buckets, I've had the privilege of scoring 100 points in a few games. And I remember those games, people like, oh my God, I can't let him score this play. And I used all that energy to score. So, those are some of the things that, it kind of, helped me move along with that process of entertaining and putting on the show, even when the defender is a little afraid.
Oh, that's it. Those 100-point games. What's your career high then? I didn't know about those 100-point games.
Most I ever scored 107.
Wow, that's awesome. And yeah, I would imagine you're at 90. They're thinking, okay, there's no way he's scoring, and now they're going to start reaching. They're going to start playing you as hard as they can. That's when they start falling. So that's awesome. Just real quick, you brought up the professor. I know you guys have a good relationship, and you guys were always kind of playing people 2-on-2, and I've seen a lot of those videos. What's your relationship like with him and also kind of the other guys on BallUp, and how you guys kind of do these collabs and just go out and embarrass people?
We are all family. I've known Professor for a long time. We're like brothers. We went on tour together. I met him in New York back when he first got on tour, when he hit the game-winning shot in the Garden. It was the first day I seen him up there, and I ended up revisiting and seeing him again. Rest in peace, Escalade, and him and the rest of the N1 guys came to Venice in maybe 2007. I met up with him then we reconnected in 2010. We played on the tour together for 7 years with BallUp. It's me and Professor on tour. I mean, what more can I say about how insane it was to know that we took the genre of street ball, and along with those other 10 guys with, AO and all the players that were on board, Escalade, rest in peace, and so on and so forth, it blew my mind to know that in the 2010 to 2007, we've built up a fan base, of following, and a bunch of people who support us to the point where they motivate us to go and pass what we thought we could do. So Professor being someone that I walked through the fire with street ball, he's helped me throughout, all different scenarios, just life in general. And we have a lot of spiritual conversations about, the things that are necessary in guiding people when you have a following like we have. And because of that, I think it's made it much easier to transition in a world full of racism and bigotry and things that are unnecessary. When they see us, interact together, they don't see the hate. They see the reason. So I think because, we are in that situation and we're able to do that, Professor has become not only just one of my closest friends, but he's absolutely family, along with those other guys with BallUp. Those guys I've known forever. I started my career with at least 6 of those players that were on the BallUp team, from Jamal Springs all the way to Mr. Africa, the special effects. And we even picked up some new guys, Gary Smith and Mosquito, and all the guys that were, all the way around the board, from Air Up There and, Pat the Rock. And it's just a family thing. And that's what I'm very proud of, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, because at the end of the day, we could shoot this ball all we want, but when you can't shoot a ball and you can't go out and do what you love, what are those people going to be there to do to help you? And those people have always been there for me, so they became family.
That's absolutely fantastic about how you guys took the kind of genre of streetball. Not only did you elevate to another level, but you became lifelong friends and a family after that. That's great. And I mean, that's awesome that such a group of guys from all over the world, different places, different backgrounds, able to come together off of that one genre of streetball.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So there's one more kind of fun thing before we get into kind of what the future has in store for you. My freshmen would be very upset if I didn't ask this because they're all very big fans of Flight. One of them asked me yesterday, they said, how did he break his ankles after June? Flight was supposed, once June came, that was supposed to be it. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about the interaction you had with Flight and that whole thing? Because they must have been funny.
Oh, so yeah, it was so funny. So before June even happened, I believe, it was, a thing to kind of see him get better by then. And I was, at the time, I was running a campaign with the NBA G League, and we had already played a game one-on-one. We played about 3 games total. We played 2 games before the June part hit. So we played 2 games. The total score was, he scored maybe 1. I don't think he scored in the first 2 games, or maybe he scored 1. But his whole, the whole thing was after June. We met in July. His thing was, or maybe late June, he has to score. He has to get some buckets. He has to work on his game. And, at the end of the day, I think he just chose the wrong person. I'm not the right person to experiment with. And because he wanted to do that, I think it made more so for a more comical collaboration between us two. Even though, people look at, Flight playing basketball and knowing that, he may not be the most skilled person. He's playing his hardest. And he's going and approaching it the best way he can. And I think that between the two of us playing, it gave you an idea of what it looks like for someone to actually neither one of us are in a position to speak as professional athletes. Even though I've already played pro, we don't currently play on pro teams. So we're playing an amateur sport, trying to play it in a professional manner, and which is whether you see it or not. Flight does love the NBA. He does want to see himself as a pro. So him being out there, I think that if you take the comical part aside, the fact that his skill level isn't high and the mentality, I guess that's why I believe his following is what it is, because his mentality is, I'm just going to go out and play as hard as I can. And of course, it was always fun to play against somebody who you can do whatever move you want to do on. So, I mean, that's, and I, no judgment on him. I pretty much do that to everybody, but it was much more fun to know that he was trying to actually shut me down. So that made it a lot more fun for me to make more, crazier moves. And if you watch all 3 get in sequence together, there's about 10, 15 moves on there that I can't even do again. There's just special situations. So shout out to Flight. I appreciate you reaching out all those years ago to do the video collabs, and you let me know when you're ready again.
Love it. I know. I love the mentality, and that's obviously been so much fun. So just to wrap up, we kind of already touched on it, which was awesome, about how your plans to go into science after you're done playing. Kind of while you're still playing, what's kind of your ideas on kind of growing the Team AnkleBreaker brand, as well as your work as an NBA playmaker and all those other things you're doing?
In the next 4 years, I plan to take my expertise in the art of dribbling a basketball and solidify myself as a trainer. I already work for the NBA doing broadcasting, and with the NBA playmakers doing content. But my next step is, because I do have a big clientele of G League players and NBA players currently of training, I plan to make sure I solidify that and get and Lord willing, get one of the top positions, or one of my one position that I could feel comfortable with in the league. Maybe not a top position, but something I'm comfortable with doing in an NBA setting, similar to what God Shamgod does for the Dallas Mavericks. He's a ball handling coach, I believe, and he's very close to the players, and he's, his player analysis is very important for the team. So somewhere along those lines. And then once, later on down the line, obviously I'm going to get into character illustration and science. There's about a bunch of things that I want to do. I've drawn, and over the last 10 years, I've drawn over 100 characters that I want to create for a comic book series. A lot of things that I just don't speak about, I'm going to do accordingly. There's apps that are going to be released in the next 2-3 years. Much sooner than that in the next 6 months. Ball handling training apps, teaching kids how to have a consistent handle. Handle your ball handling doesn't have to go away if I can teach you how to consistently work on it. And I don't compare programs. I don't like to nitpick, but a lot of things that I've been noticing about other programs is that you don't want to have the program to go away is my thing and buy another one. Is there a situation where you can make it more of a continuous workout thing where you go back to it and you say, I need to fine tune my skills. I need that. And that takes a lot of development, a lot of, thought process behind that and a lot of investment dollars and so on and so forth. But we're ready to do it. My company is, we're getting stronger and we've been moving towards that direction for the last 2 years. My nonprofit, we're going to do, with my nonprofit, we're going to do court renovations. We'll start in LA, we'll move to Canada, and then we'll go to Florida. We'll put 3 different courts, paint them up how we like them, and put those courts there and offer those kids an opportunity to have something different in that area during those hours, in those areas, during those hours when violence is a little high. So, and in those programs, there'll be classes for cognitive thinking and, healthy food course, information courses for these kids to learn how to eat better. It's just a full range of things for kids to kind of grasp for the next, 4 or 5 years of their lives, or as long as we can do it. And every day I'm just training. I signed my contract to play in the Big Three last summer, this summer, but it was canceled because of the COVID. So in the meantime, I'll be training. I can't wait to see what that's going to look like. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. And besides that, I'm just, reading every day, man. I really want to go into, even though I'm playing basketball, I am so dialed in with science that I'm, reading different books on science every day so I can, just to be ahead of the curve when I do decide to go into it. So pretty much basics for me. And I'm having fun doing it.
No, that's awesome. I know you don't talk about it often, but I'm so happy we have to talk about it here because those are just such cool things that you're doing and that, people wouldn't realize from seeing you on Instagram, watching you break ankles on Instagram. They'd see that and be like, oh, he's a guy with a great handle, but you've done so much more and you're going to do so much more. So that's awesome. So Bone, thanks so much for coming on. I absolutely love this episode. It was such a fun time to record and hope we can talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And everybody stay safe.
I like that. For those that can't see, wear a mask.
For those who can't see, I just put my mask on.
Yep.
Thanks for listening to the Big Fellas Podcast. Check us out on all major social media platforms at Big Fellas Pod to join the chop up. You can also listen to us on every podcast platform on the planet. Stay tuned for the next episode, Big Fellas.